Well, you all got a short break. That was kind of nice. Glad that you're here. Everyone's going to come filing in here momentarily. Um, our conversation this afternoon, you see it up at the top of your screen, Beyond IQ and EQ, the rise of the spiritually intelligent leader, or rise of spiritually intelligent leadership. Sorry. I am so excited to introduce you to this gentleman. You missed me. Well, thank you, Rachel. I appreciate that. Oh, I don't think you missed me. I think you missed Olivier. See, I was just assuming that perhaps you missed me, Rachel. Jessica says she's never heard this before, of this idea. So we're going to talk about this guy's magically wonderful book. And the reason I know that is because he was on my podcast previously. Here's what I'm going to tell you guys. I give away a lot of books from my podcast. I'm going to give away 2 more at the end of this. Others that have been on the almost 500 episodes, but I'm not giving away my copy of this. But we are giving away 2 books from other podcasts and a journal at the end of this session. Let me introduce this gentleman to you. He was on the podcast in March of this year, and when we finished our conversation, I immediately sent a note to Lisa and said, we need to have him on VLC. And I don't even remember. I may have even mentioned it to you. Did I mention it to you at the end of our conversation?
I can't remember.
I can't remember either. But I do remember that I immediately talked to Lisa about it. So anyway, Dr. Yassi Amran is an distinguished psychologist, an executive coach catering to CEOs, entrepreneurs, and other influential leaders, and a pioneer researcher in the field of spiritual intelligence. You're getting it from the source. He holds both an MBA from Harvard, and a PhD from Sophia University in clinical transpersonal psychology. All of this so far tells you he's way smarter than me. Prior to psychology and executive coaching, during a 13-year period, he founded and served as CEO for Individual Inc. and Valicert, 2 highly successful tech companies that he led through successful IPOs. So he brings that reality and that sort of sensibility to our conversation. He serves as a psychologist, working with individuals, couples, and groups. He's the author of Spiritually Intelligent Leadership, How to Inspire by Being Inspired. I love the subtitle, which offers a compelling roadmap that equips leaders with the means to connect with the true source of their authentic power. And he is our guest, and I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you. I'm delighted to be here, and I'm honored by all your kind words.
All right. So people over there talking about various things. I have got to stay away from that. And since someone said it earlier, it's already gone. Oh, they said, I've never heard of spiritual intelligence. That's probably where we should start. What do you mean by spiritual intelligence?
Okay, good. So most people have heard of emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence is the ability to draw on emotional resources and information to help manage our own and other people's emotions. So by analogy, spiritual intelligence is the ability to draw on spiritual resources and embody qualities that have been hailed by all the world's spiritual traditions and embody them in daily life in a way that helps functioning and well-being. So you might say, what are these qualities? And these would be qualities like purpose, service, compassion, integrity, gratitude, humility, intuition, and so on. These are...
We're going to get into a lot of those before we're done.
Yeah. Well, we have a long road to go. But the point is that regardless of the cosmology, theology of anything, these are virtues that have been accepted for thousands of years. Now, what's exciting today is in the field of positive psychology, those same very qualities have been researched and have shown to contribute to well-being, whether it's hope or gratitude or service or purpose or integrity or inner directedness. So we have a convergence of ancient wisdom through spiritual traditions, and we have modern science and positive psychology and leadership development that have highlighted how integrity and purpose and presence and so on all contribute to effective leadership. And so these things kind of come together. Now, a couple other things. So spiritual intelligence is not tied to religion, and it's not a spiritual belief, and it's not an experience. So a spiritual belief would be believing in God or the immortality of the soul, etc. Those would be quote unquote spiritual beliefs. Spiritual experience would be a momentary experience. I'm meditating, I'm walking in the forest, and I might have an experience of quote unquote oneness. We don't care about belief or experiences, we care about embodiment. Well, it's not that I don't really care, but the point,
sorry. It was just,
the point is that not about those. They may contribute to it, but so someone who's an atheist can have spiritual intelligence qualities. They can have a sense of purpose. They can have gratitude. They can have joy. They can embody beauty, integrity, humility. So you could be an atheist, and my clients have been all over the range, from people that are devout religion to spiritual but not religious to an atheist, but they could still cultivate their spiritual intelligence. And as they develop and embody those qualities, they become more inspired, more empowered, and then they radiate that energy out, and then it draws people to them and their vision.
So Walt just said this in the chat. My counselor taught me that your spiritual side is what gets you out of bed. You want to comment on that one way or the other?
Well, sure. We could say, we ask commonly people, how's your spirit today? And we don't so much think of it in technical terms, but your spirit comes in actually from the root word in Latin is the animating breath of life. So our spirit is our life force energy. And what gets us out of bed in the morning is our life force energy and our sense of purpose, and that we have been given gifts in life. Each of us are born with our superpowers, talents, and gifts, and we're most fulfilled when we express them to contribute to others. So what gets us out of bed in the morning is this feeling like, I have something to share, and I want to express myself. I want to actualize my potential. And that's our life force, and that's our gifts that want to be actualized and brought to bear. And when we do that, we live in joy and fulfillment and gratitude and all the other things that most of us want to do. And we're connected to ourselves, and we're connected to others, and we're connected to the transcendent dimension of life.
Well, that's all pretty deep, everybody, for a Thursday afternoon. So let's what I want to do next is, in the book, you talk about 7 dimensions, and you've tossed out a number of words that to help you describe the kinds of things you're talking about when you talk about spiritual intelligence. What I'm going to do is I'm going to lay very, very relatively quickly. I'm going to lay out the 7 dimensions. And then I think what we'll do is we'll let you talk about whichever one of the 7 you want to talk about first, wherever you want to go. And as I say these 7, you guys can use the Q&A to say, hey, tell me more about that or whatever. And I'll let you start, and then we'll let the group guide us after that. Does that work for you?
Sounds like a deal.
All right. So here are the 7 dimensions, everyone. Meaning, grace, interdirected, community, presence, truth, and wisdom. And I can't even say those things without almost getting goosebumps. And I have a couple that I really hope we talk about, but this isn't really about me. So where do you want to start? For whatever reason, whether that's what you're feeling right now or whatever. Or what you think Kevin needs to hear or whatever.
No, Kevin is great. We're right now. Well, there's a lot of joy now. So I'm noticing the lightheartedness, and we could talk about joy, and there's a lot of beauty and connection between us. So we could talk about grace and beauty, I think, and joy. So we'll just start there because it's what's here. I'm enjoying your presence. I mean, that's another one we'll talk about. But there's joy. And I think when there's joy, we're naturally drawn in. And all the research these days shows that when we're in joy, we're creativity, and there's a flow of ideas and so on. So, in the domain of grace, there's joy, there's beauty. How do we find beauty in our work? When we find beauty, in our work, it just draws us in. Beauty just inspires us. And, leaders that were driven by a sense of beauty, like Steve Jobs. He had a tremendous sense of beauty for the products and their elegance, and that became a marketing differentiator. The other fundamental thing, part of grace, is the root of it is distrust, a sense of trust in the future. We can't lead others if we don't trust that what we're doing is meaningful, is impactful, and we feel hopeful and optimistic that it's going to have the right effect. And last part of it is gratitude, appreciating others. And we know that's so important for motivating people and ourselves as a gratitude practice. So we just knocked grace. I hope I did it gracefully, maybe not so.
I want to go to you've not been here all day, but obviously some of these people have. Jessica, certainly it was. I'm going to put her comment up here. And even though you weren't in our session we had about conflict, I'd like for you to talk to this. I'm thinking about the conflict session earlier today. It's a lot easier to give grace when you come from a place of curiosity. As we talked about conflict, one of the tenets we were talking about was being more curious with the other person and about the situation. Any comment, even though you weren't in that session, any comment that you want to make about that?
Sure. Yeah. Well, we're jumping to the domain of truth that you mentioned. So the domain of truth has two things. One is egolessness and openness. So openness speaks to curiosity. And when you are in conflict, you want to do two things. One is stand your ground, because if you just kind of give in, you're not leading and there's no real exchange. So in the tension, in the conflict, new creative solutions emerge. And if you're leading a team and you've got marketing, you got sales, you have engineering, etc. I work with CEOs. Ultimately, there's tension between different departments and their agendas. But you want to stay in the tension. You want each person to hold their ground, advocate their point of view, but remain curious and open. And then out of that, there's a synthesis of some new path. So curiosity and truth and egolessness. So it's about doing the right thing, not about being right. So the part of us that wants to be right is our ego. And that blocks our curiosity. We're not really listening to the other person. We're rehearsing what it is we want to say in order to win the argument. So curiosity is that openness that puts our ego aside and says, let's look at what's right here and what's the right thing to do, as opposed to I want to show myself as being right. And I think we all have experienced, whether it's in our romantic relationships or in a team, like people get into being right, and that's coming from a place of ego, and there's no curiosity, no openness. So but the paradoxical thing, and then, so I'm jumping around here, if you don't mind, we're just flowing with it. So the other thing is from a leadership standpoint, is to be inner directed. And we have to have the confidence. So this is the other domain, is inner directedness. So we want to be open and curious to other people and not be ego driven, but we also need to have a sense of confidence and groundedness in our vision and what we believe in. And so this is the paradoxical quality of the yin and yang. I want to be confident, advocate my point of view, and I want to be open to you and be centered.
So let's just stop right there, because that's really good. And that people talk about that paradox, that tension, if you want to call it that, a lot. So can we just, I love just listening to you riff, but I'd really like to dive into that a little bit more. Like if we want to be more spiritually intelligent, to use this framework, what advice do you have to help us balance ego and confidence? Because confidence is one of the most powerful things we can have until we have too much of it, right? Until it becomes about our ego. So what's your take there? Or what advice do you have for us to get better in that area?
Yeah, so I think you're touching on something more subtle and nuanced and important. So the problem is not too much confidence. The problem is arrogance, which usually comes from lack of confidence. And so, this is again yin yang. So we want to have confidence and we want to have humility. And we think humility being like not thinking of ourselves much or being down on ourselves. That's not true humility. It's actually true humility is egolessness where we're not thinking about ourselves. So it's not about ourselves. It's about our mission. It's about our vision. And so if I'm devoted to my vision, it's not about me. It's about the vision. and all my energy is aimed at getting to that vision, and my sense of purpose, my higher self is calling me. It's not about me. I'm not trying to prove myself. If I am secure in who I am, I don't need to shore up a deficient sense of self. The ego is a structure we create when underneath it all we feel some deficiency, some shame, and we're trying to prop up our sense of self, and that creates the ego, that creates the arrogance. And you could see it in people. That's when we're in confidence, we're relaxed. When we're in arrogance and we're ego, there's tension. We're fighting. We're resisting an underlying sense of insecurity and deficiency, and we're trying to compensate for it. So we're not coming from a place of expression of our confidence and our groundedness in ourselves and knowing our value and so on. So we can be confident, we can humble, we can be confident and egoless. And but there's often a confusion.
So I love this. You just said something. So first of all, in the session before you got here, we were talking about an assessment about attributes, and I took the assessment, and everyone was seeing my results, and the author of the assessment is showing Kevin's results and explaining it all, right? So one of my top attributes is self-efficacy, which connects with confidence, right? And so this has always been, and I often talk about that we can be humble and still be confident and all this stuff, but you just said something to me, or you just said something that spoke to me in a way, even though I teach some of what you're talking about, that was very helpful to me. I just want to tell you that. And so maybe it's helpful to the rest of you. So if you missed it, you can underline it in your notes, is that when we're confident, when we're truly confident, we're relaxed.
Yeah.
And when we're coming at it from ego or proving it to others or arrogance, there's tension, and that to me was a very, very useful thought to me. Thank you.
Yeah, and we could track our body. So if we pay attention to our body, how we're breathing, is our breathing natural, flowing, at ease? Is there relaxation? Can I be seated back, lean back, relax and enjoy the ride, as they say on the airplane? So if you're relaxed, like, I'm okay, but if I'm like tense and leaning forward and my body is contracted, and then my body is in a fight or flight response, which says that underneath it all, there's fear. There's no confidence. Confidence comes from Latin. It's actually related to the word of trust. So when we trust ourselves, we trust reality, we trust the goodness of ourselves and the universe, then we're relaxed, we're in trust, and we're not in a fight or flight response. When we're fight or flight response, our ability to listen and metabolize and be creative with ideas is reduced. So, the first thing is to track ourselves, to be in touch with ourselves, and it relates to, you said, inner directed, another one of the dimensions. We're inner directed, we're in touch with ourselves, and we're aware of ourselves. This relates also to emotional intelligence. Then we start to notice we're tightening up, we're getting into a fight or flight mode. Then it alerts us, okay, what's going on here? Some part of me is being threatened, and I'm not really open anymore. So I need to do some things to get centered, to become present, so that my neocortex is back online, that I can listen and think and respond, and there's a real collaboration.
Yeah, I love that. There's some questions in the Q&A. We'll get to them. If you have other things of what you're hearing that you want to ask about, put them in there. But I want to, before we go there, you were talking about inner directed, and we've talked about confidence, and we could certainly talk about integrity as another one of those. But I feel I want to make sure we're talking about the ones that maybe we don't always think about.
Okay.
And I think integrity, and I'm not trying to downplay the importance of integrity, but I think that there are enough other things with richness here that we can talk about. We don't need to talk there. But the one that I want you to talk about that I think is so important is centeredness. Talk about centeredness. What does that mean, look like, and maybe even how do we nurture that for ourselves?
Well, yeah, I mean, centeredness is like, when we're in touch with ourselves, and we are rooted in ourselves, and there are the winds of life, the storms of life, the waves of life, but we're not thrown off so much, and we could remain open-hearted and open-minded in the midst of chaos. So essentially, we are in touch with the core essence of our being, with our spirit. That's our home. Our home is that life force energy, our spirit, however way you feel your essence. And when you're rooted in your essence, that's your home. When we're at home, we're confident, we're comfortable, we're at ease. As children, it was like, oh, I just want to go home. When are we going to be there? So we're agitated out of home. So when
How
we're
long till we get there, Mom? Right?
yeah, yeah, but in a way, as adults, we're agitated, we're out of center, we're out of home, and we're not comfortable. When we're out of center, we're out of our home, on our base, the core of our being. Then there's an agitation, there's nervousness, there's lack of satisfaction. Our nervous system is not settled. So, actually, Bain and Company, one of the top consulting companies in the world, did a study with, I forget, like 2,000 companies and employees, and they looked at what are the qualities that lead to inspiring leaders. And what they found is, first of all, that employees that are inspired are twice as productive than the average employees. And they identified 33 qualities that lead to inspiring leadership. And about over half of those overlap with these spiritually intelligent qualities. Is kind of amazing. But one of the top ones was centeredness. If you're a leader and you're dealing with high tension decisions and problems in your team or in your marketplace, if you're not centered,
complexity and chaos. Right?
Yeah, complexity and chaos and threats from competition, from AI, from layoffs. I don't know, all the stuff that as leaders we have to deal with. Then we're not centered. Our judgment is not clear, and we can't make good decisions. And our team loses confidence in us. We want to follow a leader that knows where they're going, they're centered, and they feel in control of themselves. So I think that's why I think one of the top 3 in the Bain study was centeredness. And so I'm kind of giving you.
Yeah. So Keith says he once read a study of the top 25 ranked tennis players compared to the top 5, and what was different was the way they responded to negative plays, missed points. They just more relaxed and moved past it and just went on to the next one, which relates to this idea of centeredness, but it also connects to confidence, which are both in that interdirected component.
Yeah. As opposed to going into judgment and getting negative on ourselves, how stupid, and then we're collapsed, and all our life force energy is depleted, and we can't respond to the next volley.
And we got our first Ted Lasso reference of the entire VLC, at least that I saw, be a goldfish, right? So I want to go to one of the questions. I think I told you this when we did the podcast, that when we get all these books and that people pitch us to have on the show, and someone sent us your book, and the first thing that struck me was how to inspire by being inspired, and that subtitle is sort of what, I mean, I look at every book we get, but that's the thing that, like, ooh, I really want to look at this. That's what drew me in. And so we haven't really gotten there exactly. At least we haven't used that word yet. And yet Earl asked a question about that. So is spirituality, it's going to come up here, is spirituality aligned with inspiration? So now can you start to make the connection for us between all the stuff we've been talking about and how to inspire by being inspired?
Yeah, so I'll go back to the story. My first Harvard Business School case was managers and leaders. Are they the same or different? By this legendary guy, Abraham Zalesnik, who was one of the leading scholars of leadership at Harvard Business School. He was also a psychoanalyst. But anyway, his point was that leaders make decisions, allocate scarce resources, and leaders inspire. Now, if you think about the root word of the root of the word inspire, it is the same as spirit, which is spirituality, is the animating breath of life and life force. So the job of the leader is to breathe life and cohesion into the organization and alignment. So it's right there. When we think about leadership, we're thinking about inspiration. Now, obviously, we can't inspire anybody else. We can't lead anybody else until and when we're inspired. Until when it's all leadership starts with self-leadership. So this idea that I'm going to lead someone else, but I'm a follower myself. I'm more of a politician. I'm trying to figure out what the team thinks or whatever. I'm a popularity context. There's no leadership. I'm not inner-directed, and I'm not a leader. So leadership starts with self-leadership. Inspiring others has to start with being inspired. And when we're inspired, our fire is burning high, our flame is strong, our radiance is strong, and then attracts resonant vibration from others who resonate with our purpose, with our vision, with our mission. And so if we're clear on our purpose, so this goes into the domain of meaning, that what our purpose is, what our vision is, what our values are, then we're inspired by that, then we're enthusiastic about that, and then people are drawn by that to the extent they resonate. If they don't resonate, then they shouldn't be on our team. They should go find a team that they resonate with the vision and the mission and the purpose. So we have to be inspired by our vision, and then the right people will come and will build a community that's aligned and reinforced, and then the energy multiplies. When you have a team of people with a shared sense of purpose and vision, then it's synergistic and there's that much more energy and aliveness.
So you're talking about energy, you're talking about aliveness. Nick says, direct reports, your team, they can read your inspiration and motivation. If you are low energy, they will feed off that, just like the other way around, right? Both matter, right? So
Right.
100% on that. And you used a word earlier, and I stopped and wrote it down because it's a word that I haven't seen very often in, in business literature, but we introduced it, or we talked about it. We didn't introduce the word, but we talked about it in this book, The Long Distance Team, the word cohesion. And we were looking for a word to help us think about what we were trying to accomplish there. And so cohesion was the word we used there. We talk about it, and also in the brand new edition of The Long Distance Leader. And if you haven't ordered your copy, Marissa will put it up on the link so you can make sure you get your copy and get all of the recordings and archives of the first day, the pre-conference day, when you order your copy of The Long Distance Leader. I want to...
Yes, in cohesion, we do talk about alignment. It's so important to be aligned. Otherwise, people are pulling in different direction. And so cohesion is like, it's like we're in a team, we're like an organism, and then there are all these organs and pieces, and they have to work in harmony towards the life of the organism, the purpose of the organism.
Which raises a really interesting point, right? Because, and I write about this in my new book that just comes out next March. It's the idea of, do we think about an organization as being a machine or as an organism, right? And
Yeah.
what you just said is thinking about it more biologically makes it more complex, but it's also more, generally speaking, more accurate about how it really is, how we really are hooked together when we're in an organization, and we're talking about community and connectedness and synthesis. So we're even using words now that are in the framework here that are biological in nature, right? So Alexandra asks, does this also relate to the idea of the 12 universal laws for life?
I'm sorry, I'm humbled. I don't know what those are. So
well, there you go. That's okay. I was hoping you did, because I wasn't sure I did either. So Alexandra, if you have something else you can give us there, otherwise we're going to have to move on from there. I was hoping, because you're so smart, that we would get there. How about this? This is a good one. Do you see what's the link, or do you see the link between servant leadership and spiritually intelligent leadership?
Yeah, well, if you looked at the meaning domain, which we didn't get to, so it has purpose, service, vision, and turning difficulty to opportunity. So servant leadership is a key part of spiritually intelligent leadership. So service is a core capacity or competency of spiritually intelligent leadership. Though I put a slight difference between the way usually the word servant leadership is used. If you read the seminal thinker around it, Robert Greenleaf, he talked about servant leadership, where the leader, it's kind of an upside down org chart, and the leader is serving his team. And I think that's one component of it. But in my mind, servant leadership, we're not just servants to our team, we're servant to our mission, we're servant to our customers, we're servant to our community. So there are multiple stakeholders. The point is, it's not about ego, it's not about me, it's in service. And it's service of a bigger mission and vision. And so I would just enlarge it. If you're just trying to serve your team, I think that's a component of it, because they're crucial to serve them, and then they're motivated to serve the market or the customers or whatever. But I'm not just serving my team, making them happy and feel good. I'm serving my mission. I'm serving my purpose. I'm serving my vision, and serving my team is part of that. So I look at it a little more broadly than typically people talk about servant leadership. But servanthood is key. And it's egolessness that calls us to serve. And when we have that call to serve, we're serving our team, we're serving our community, we're serving our mission, we're serving our purpose, we're serving our vision.
Alexandra has put all of the 12 universal laws. I'm not going to read them all. If you scroll up in the chat, you'll see them. The law of compensation, the law of relativity, the law of polarity, the law of vibration, the law of attraction. Those are some of them. So I don't know if there's any connection. I think we've talked a little bit about the law of vibration.
The law of gender perhaps comes to me as like the yin yang, masculine, feminine. One of the qualities I talk about in spiritually intelligent leadership is related to inner wholeness and holism. So that's there. And polarity comes into that synthesis, the yin yang, and taking thesis, antithesis, and there's always polarities, and then finding the synthesis of polarity, and so on. Awesome. Divine oneness, certainly unity and holism, looking at problems holistically. That's part of a key part of spiritually intelligent leadership, is looking at things holistically within our company, so that marketing and sales and engineering and finance and all are important, and we're looking at the whole thing. It's not like we're just an engineering driven company. Well, then you're in sales, you feel like second-class citizen. So it's really looking at things holistically, and we're always part of a bigger thing. And when we look at things holistically, then we can make the best decisions for the wellness of the whole.
We've talked about at least a little, I think, about all of the 7 dimensions except 2. I want to talk a little bit about, let you talk a little bit about the 2 of those, and then I've got a few more things to do before we finish. And one of them is presence. The four bullets, if you will, or the 4 pieces underneath presence are attention, intention, empowerment, and passion. And the one I'd really like you to talk about is intention, because to me, that is so critical. I talk about it all the time. So tell us, in your framework, as you're thinking about it, when we think about intention, what do you mean?
Well, intention is like...
passion. Ollie, the last one, passion. Attention, intention, empowerment, and passion. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, so as I say, intention is super critical. I just finished a coaching session earlier this morning with my client, and he was kind of going, he was talking to me about a board meeting that he went to, and he mismanaged the meeting. It's something that was supposed to take half an hour, took 2.5 hours, because he lost track of his intention for the meeting, and then he got sidetracked. So intention is like, where are we going? Well, it's kind of my North Star. And whether we need to have an intention for our entire life, for this year, for this month, for a meeting. What is my intention? And that is kind of like, where am I going, so that I want to be present to that and remember that as I'm interacting with whoever I'm interacting. So it's kind of my agenda. And otherwise, our ADHD culture, we're all getting texts and emails and whatever, Slack messages, and someone says something and we're off and talking about something else and we lose the thread. So if you're sailing, you got to know where you're going. You got to set your compass, and you got waves and shifting winds, and your intention is the rudder that gets you back on track to the island or the shore you're going. Otherwise, you're lost at sea. So that's
I
super
love that
important.
in the context of a meeting, by the way, whether it's a board meeting or whether it's your team meeting. I love
Yeah,
that
exactly.
because we can get that lost so easily. And so that's a very practical sort of piece of that.
Yeah.
And the last of the 7 that we haven't really talked about is wisdom. And to be honest with you, the 2 that I most hoped we would talk about were grace, where we started, and wisdom, where we're ending. And
Okay.
under wisdom, you have intuition, higher self, devotion, and practice. So what do you want to say? Could use a journal. What do you say about any of those?
Well, they're all super important. I mean, intuition is critical. We need to do the analysis, etc. But ultimately, as leaders, we need to trust our gut feelings at some level. And we need to be able to quiet our mind. All the greatest discoveries and all the greatest innovators use their intuition. And people like Einstein talks about it, and Steve Jobs. That intuition was critical for their insight. So where these ideas come from, we need to quiet our mind and listen to something deeper, that we do all the analysis, but then our intuition somehow gives us information. Higher self is that we can get lost in the stuff. One of the best techniques I suggest to tune into higher self is we have a figure, someone that embodies wisdom for us, whether it's a grandparent or a spiritual teacher or a friend, and we can dialogue with them, or it could be our future self. It's amazing how useful it is when we get lost in a problem to ask ourselves, okay, what is my future self 10 years from now who's going to be successful, confident, the person who I want to be, going to tell me about the situation? What values and how should I show up in dealing with this problem? So our future self often embodies our higher self. Devotion is like that single-minded commitment to our sense of purpose. And when we have that devotion, we are internally aligned, and all our life force energy is behind that. And that feeds our passion, that feeds our purpose. And we're single-minded, focused, and it just gives so much clarity to our life and so much meaning and so much passion. So when we embody that level of devotion, I think people feel it, and our life has meaning and direction. And I know it's kind of a, in a me-centered world, that's an individual. What do you mean I'm going to devote? I'm devoted to me. I'm devoted to number one. I am number one, and I'm devoted to myself. But
and now we're back to arrogance, and now
or egoness.
Egoness, right?
Yeah, and I mean, we've all worked for leaders that were focused on their personal agenda, advancing their careers. It's so demotivating. Versus you see a leader that's devoted to their vision and their mission and their purpose, and it inspires you. It's like it goes back to the selflessness of servant leadership and service. So, it's that devotion that inspires others and says, this person is really focused on their mission and the vision. It's not about them. So I want to contribute. And it reduces the politics in the team and the conflicts. Like, okay, let's all get back. It's not my personal agenda. What is our collective agenda?
Where are we where are we going? What are we
and
about?
we're devoted to that, and we're putting all our energy and our life force in. And the last one is practice. Like anything, we're developing all these qualities, and it can be overwhelming, to try and work on all of these. And so we have different muscles in our body, right? And you can't develop all of them so simultaneously, but you want to dedicate some time and set some intentions. Say, okay, for the next month I'm really going to work on my intention or my attention or whatever, and I'm going to develop practices. We all know that we need to practice our body and we get exercise, etc. We go to the gym or go on walks or lift weights or whatever it is we do to keep our physicality in shape. And maybe if we're more advanced, we're also doing meditation to train our consciousness or whatever it is else we're doing. But we need to practice these qualities. And the word practice has two meanings. One is, you're practicing for the performance. You practice basketball for the game, or you practice for a theater show. But it also means like what you do. So a doctor has a family practice. They practice medicine. So it is what we do. It's the habits we form. So as we practice gratitude, we become grateful. As we practice joy, we become joyful. As we practice, any of these qualities, it becomes who we are, our second nature. So it is who we are. So our practice becomes who we are. And that's what we're working on, is to becoming a person that embodies these qualities of joy, beauty, grace, confidence, humility, etc. But it's an ongoing practice. And I don't know anybody that's reached the top summit of potential. Human potential is infinite. I've been working on all these qualities myself, and I hope to continue to do so till the day I die. It's an amazing adventure and makes life meaningful and joyful and beautiful, and yeah. So that's my practice.
There's all sorts of comments over here about how much people are enjoying this, and I'm also thinking, everybody, like, I'm not sure this was the best thing to have late in the thing, because I think everyone's like really trying to soak this up, and a lot of you have been here all day long, and yet I think that leads us to an important question, and the question is, well, okay, so our high school students, which you're not going to know this, Yoshi, that's Phoebe and Hannah, the twins, said, what about monks? They're asking about monks as it relates to their practices here. Can you take 1 minute on that? Because that's an interesting question.
Well, sure. I mean, monks go into the cave and meditate and so on, and that's their practice. And it's easy to get into oneness and so on. But spiritual intelligence is about bringing our wisdom and our insight and these understandings into daily life. When I'm in my team meeting and I'm in my family meetings, I'm driving on the freeway, I'm in line in the supermarket. So it's easy to be, centered and calm and, in integrity and grounded and whatever when I'm in a monastery and it's isolated and they're cooking for me and whatever. But here in daily life, it's much more challenging. So this is where practice, I'll just throw one other word about practice, is so spiritual intelligence is not cognitive intelligence. You can't just listen to this show or even just read my book and become spiritually intelligent. That's why the book has all these exercises in them. So there's suggested exercises and practices. So this is a way to rewire ourselves, rewire our brain, our neuroplasticity, develop these habits. So it goes back to practice. But we're practicing while living, not just going to the monastery.
Going to the monastery.
Yeah.
Where I was going to go right before I saw that, and I wanted to let you talk on that for a second, is, okay, there's so much that you just talked about and gives us all so much to think about. Where do you suggest, and you've already said this is a journey, there's no destination here. What's your suggested first step for us?
In my book. No, but kidding aside, I think there are two of these qualities that are essential. All of them are essential, but one is intention. So first, to set the intention, I want to cultivate my spiritual intelligence, and then be clear that that is an intention. If it is, or whatever the intention is, we got to know where we're going. So I would start with that. And then the other one is purpose. And purpose is like, what are my gifts? What are my unique talents? What has life gifted me that's unique about me? Kevin, Lisa, whatever, John. And what makes me me? And how do I want to actualize that self, those gifts, to be in service to others. I would start with those two, but you can start really anywhere. They all lead to each other because it's an interwoven kind of thing. But I think intention is we have to start with intention because that's our North Star, and then purpose would shortly
Perfect.
follow behind that.
Perfect. I'm going to ask you a question that I've asked a version of to every one of our guests, and it's a big question, but here we go. What's the most important thing you've learned about spiritual intelligence in your career?
What's the most important?
Everyone has done that, which means I'm asking a good question, right? Because they're taking a pause, they're taking a deep breath. Go ahead, Yoshi.
Well, I think spiritual intelligence, the most important is that at some level everybody has it, and at some level everybody can develop it further. And regardless of where we are in the spiritual or non-spiritual spectrum, we can develop it and we find it meaningful and rewarding. I mean, the other thing I'll say, this is more of a sales pitch, but I think spiritual intelligence for me is the highest and deepest form of expression of our life force energy. And so everything is built on our life force energy. And when we cultivate our spiritual intelligence, we're really actualizing and expressing the highest and deepest expression of our spirit, our life force energy, the thing that makes us alive. That we've got this amazing gift of life, and we want to make it the best of it. So
awesome. All right, as promised, everybody, I have two books from the podcast archive that are going to go. Those two books are going to go to Walt and Keith Wills, and journals are going to go to Kenya and Mr. Tom Alway. So hopefully you now know how to do this, but if you don't, Marissa will put it in the chat. We need to know your mailing address. So info@kevineikenberry.com. Send us your mailing address and what you won, and we'll get those on their way to you. Yossi, thanks so much for being here. Give him some love in the chat, everybody.
Thank you. What a delight, and thank you for inviting me, and thank you for your openness. That I felt like my passion for this thing came through, and it was your receptivity and your openness and your resonance to what I was saying, that our connection that enabled me to show up more fully, and that's a delight.
I love that. Thank you so much. That's some kind things have been said to me today, but nothing any kinder than that. So thank you so much. I appreciate that. And all the best to you. All the rest of you, I'll see you in about a minute and a half ish. And you'll see. Thanks again so much for being here. If you'll stay just for 1 sec. The rest of you, I'll see you shortly.